Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Three Guys and a Ball. And we have a special guest today, Thomas Pecora. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Thomas, and what are we going to talk about today?
We're going to talk about situational awareness and some of the aspects that I experienced with that subject while I was working 24 years at the CIA.
Nice.
And I've been retired since 2013 and I've been teaching situational awareness and personal safety ever since. And so I've had some real world experience putting situational awareness and personal safety type training to use.
All right. Well, let's serve this up. This ball today is Thomas Pecora, situational awareness, how to recognize when things are going bad and not do stupid stuff.
Well, part of the training at the CIA was very focused on avoiding problem areas and danger. And we put a focus, basically what we call a 90-10, which is 90% avoidance and 10% mitigation, because we found that that was extremely effective. And we worked in a lot of bad places where, you know, when you're doing clandestine operations, you don't want to come up on the radar at all, even, officially or unofficially. So learning about your environment was a critical part of then being able to blend in and avoid being targeted by criminals, terrorists, or just being picked up on the radar of the local intelligence services or police departments.
All right, I love this. I gotta say something, Tom. Okay, can you give a little bit of advice for someone traveling anywhere in the world, specifically places that we would be perceived as standing out as Americans, whether it's for work or also for pleasure?
Actually, Tom, I got you on this. I just taught some kids a survival while backpacking course, and I said, hey, if you don't want to have to use these skills, stay home.
First bit of advice, yeah. That's like the first law of gunfighting. If you know there's going to be a gunfight, don't show up. Yeah. When it comes to travel, I hate to say it, but the first thing is your attire. Don't pack anything that's, you know, it's going to give away where you're from or any of your orientations in terms of your political affiliations, religious affiliations, anything like that. You want to go bland, to quote the new kind of cool term, you want to be the gray man or gray person. And the other part that people don't do that is relatively easy to do nowadays is do their research. Go on the internet, find out as much as you can about the place you're going, utilize the State Department resources in terms of country profiles, city profiles, utilize reviews from, like for example, if you rent a hotel room, find out the reviews for the hotel, the area around the hotel, learn the routes that you're going to be taking, and you can do all this vicariously by your computer. So this research aspect is really important in terms of understanding what's going on in your area, so you don't end up, one, being surprised by stuff that's going on, that's been going on, and two, so you have an idea of what may happen so that you can do some planning.
Thank you. That's great detail. Appreciate that. Paul, what you got?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. I'm in my spaceship again, so, and Jake, you know all about spaceships, man. No, you know what, Tom, I was really happy to kind of bring you on, because I know that, you know, we kind of found each other, and I actually ended up taking your course on situational awareness specialist through the Arcuri Group. So, you know, can you tell me, you know, can you tell us a little bit about your history, about where you were involved, any specific incidences that you can think of in your past that you can kind of relay to your expertise and experience on situational awareness for our audience to kind of hear about?
Oh, absolutely. I did, as I said, 24 years at the CIA, was a security officer by trade, but because of the terror situation, I got pulled into working counterterrorism and training, and I did 7 years in the counterterrorism center. And one of the jobs I had was actually doing surveillance on terrorists and looking for their signature and protecting our people. And a lot of that work was solo. I'd be in locations around the world, hostile places, usually not on the tourist circle. And I would have to learn about the environment and put into play everything that I had been taught about understanding my environment, understanding the threats in my environment, how to blend in, and then how to stay out of trouble, because being alone, and I'm a very big and imposing 5'6". So I had to use all the skills necessary to keep the bad guys off me, especially the criminal elements, because I skulked in a lot of bad areas, so the low light conditions, all the things we tell you not to do. But that's what we needed to do to surveil some of these terrorists. And I worked in some places like Khartoum, Sudan, where I worked against Al Qaeda, Abu Nidal, Hezbollah, all these bad groups. And the things that I learned about being on the street was to be that gray man, to blend in, and also to work our positioning. The ability to spot trouble coming before it hits us is so important. And part of that is just being in a good position to observe your environment. So I had to learn where to stand, where to sit, where to move in those hostile environments.
So you know what? We did a short series on what if you find yourself in an active shooter, active threat environment a couple months ago in Colorado, and other places were going up. Why don't you share? We talked a lot about being aware when you're in a cafe, in a school, or someplace like that. Why don't you give us some tips on positioning and what to look for when your environment's changing, and maybe your top 2 or 3 things for being a gray man in that environment?
Well, the first part, I would give you a couple of little physical things that you can do and incorporate into your life. One is when you enter an area, whether it's when you drive in, you walk in, take a couple of seconds, stop what you're doing, and observe the area. We try to do a 5-second scan at a minimum. Look around, do a 360, and find out what's going on before you get out of your car, or as you walk into an area. If I'm walking into a building, as I cross the threshold, I slow down, almost stop, and I'm doing a left and right to see what's in that area, focusing heavily on exits and places of potential danger, people in the environment, and their demeanor. So no matter where I go, those are the things I'm targeting right away. For example, if I'm going into a 7-Eleven or a late night grocery store or a gas station, before I enter, I'm looking through the windows to see exactly where everybody is and what they're doing, because those places at night have a high incidence of robbery. So I want to see what people are doing, and then as I enter, I'm going to continue to do my scan, and then I'm going to put myself in a position so that I can watch as many people as possible while I'm doing my transactions.
Right, and you're not walking around like you're a pit bull looking for a fight. You're walking around as in de-escalate, create space, perspective the entire time. You're trying to be as covert as you can, right? And not trying to create attention to yourself. And to
avoid. If I see something I don't like, I leave.
Right, across the street.
That's the truth.
For sure.
Yeah. We have a little mantra: choose safety. Choose safety. If something just doesn't look right, leave. Go somewhere else. And when it comes to an active shooter situation, by being aware of what people are doing around you and getting a feel for what's going on in that environment, and then also, as I said, focusing on exits and entrances and your escape route. If something happens, I know immediately where I'm going to go, my primary and my secondary. And if you look at most of these active shooter incidents, the people who reacted first and ran survived. So I'm a big believer in the run away and fight another day. So there's no reason, if you hear something you don't like, for example, if I hear firecrackers and it's not the 4th of July, I'm out the door. I'm not going to wait around. And if everybody laughs at me later and says, you ran from the firecracker, I'm going to go, yeah, I ran. That's okay.
I'm really glad you brought that up, Tom, because that's actually a really good point. Oh, hello? Wait, hold on, am I losing signal here?
Yeah, you're here, spaceship. You're out of the galaxy. You came back into our world.
I just came back from Pluto. Oh wait, that's not even a planet anymore. No, so I'm really glad you brought that up because Tom, when you said that, people will laugh at you because you left because on the 4th of July there's firecrackers. Well, the problem is that a majority of people don't even know what real gunshots even sound like, let alone different calibers and different weapons have different sounds for that come out of them. So, if you were to give a piece of advice to a society today that literally walks around with their head buried in their phones, what would you tell them to make them more situationally aware, combined with the fact that so far in 2021, we're averaging about 10 active shooter incidents a week. The latest one, I believe, happening last Friday down the street from my house at Knott's Berry Farm.
Wow. Yeah. Number one, you've got, again, got to know your environment, and you have to also understand what's going on in the world. The active shooter, there's four main types of active attacker type scenarios. One is firearms. Another one is knives and clubs. Another one is explosives, and then the last one is ramming with vehicles. So if you don't understand the characteristics that go with those threats, it's going to be hard to react because you're going to be processing the information. It's going to take you too long to understand and then react. So you got to learn about threats in your environment, understand the characteristics, like what do gunshots sound like. When you start to hear people screaming, you should already be going through the exit because that may be there might be a knifing attack or somebody with a club. If you hear a vehicle revving and then you hear smash and you hear screaming, there's a good chance that it's a vehicle ramming incident, and you should know where to go to protect yourself from a vehicle, a hardened structure behind a wall. So it's understanding those characteristics and then putting them into play. And the other part that goes way beyond that is denial. We've got to fight the idea that nothing's going to happen to us. I'm not saying being paranoid. Your chances are that you're going to, if you're going to have an accident, it's going to be in a car. If you're going to have a real threat to your life, it's going to probably be that or a fall or something like that. Your chances of being attacked by a criminal or a terrorist are low, but it's possible, and you need to plan for it and and believe that it could happen, so that when something happens, you're not sitting in that mental loop of, this can't be happening.
Here's the other thing. No matter how well prepared you are with the information, you should. When you travel, you look lost because you don't know where you're going. Even if you have been there before, you park your car in a different place and you're looking around to make sure you're on the right street. You're checking, is this the right coffee shop? You're out of your routine. And for the criminal element, that stands out. I like what you said about if you hear gunshots or you hear people screaming, just go, like that makes sense. But short of that, what is the number one indicator of trouble that you've seen out in your travels that you're like, hey, if you see this type of activity in the coffee shop, in the store, in the neighborhood, like you should consider leaving? What would that be?
Well, it goes into the behavior, looking at the behavior of people. When they start feeling, when you start to see people feeling uncomfortable around you, that's a huge indicator. Even if it's one or two people, that's because all it takes maybe is one or two to kick it off. So if you see anybody with a behavior that's not matching the environment, in other words, when everybody is happy because you're watching a football game in a crowded bar in Barcelona, and there's somebody standing there and they're not happy, that should be an indicator that something may kick off. Or the opposite, if you're in a place where people are more somber, or and you see people that are a little bit too boisterous, that's another indicator. So anything that stands out from the norm, you should be focusing on, and usually those are the indicators that something bad is going to happen.
Okay, hey guys, I want to backtrack real quick when you talked about training. So you mentioned this, and this is where it's so important, where training is an investment, and organizations, individuals, and teams, we have to push that, and that's where all four of us. I know that's our whole thing. That's our zero is training. Now, I want to mention this. You can play out the scenario in training, but what you can't simulate in training is the energy of the emotion. And that's why training has to be an investment, and we have to push that out there. And we can't stop with just people thinking, oh, yeah, I'm good. I've been trained on this. Well, how long has it been? You need refresher training as well. So if you could talk about training and challenging people and ensuring, this is one big thing in organizations that we've all come from, is sometimes we can also be overtrained where we're not giving ourselves enough challenging situations and we're not really pushing ourselves to go outside of our comfort zones.
Or trained in one specific thing that really narrows your view.
Right.
Absolutely. Training is essential, but it has to be applied. And, that's where they say book smart. Well, book smart won't work in the real world. You have to be out there. And one of the things about situational awareness training and personal safety training is a classroom will not teach you what you need to know. The best analogy is when you take a driver's ed class and you go through all that training, when you walk out of that class, are you a good driver? No, not a chance. Unless you're some gifted, maybe the son of Mario Andretti. But all of us really have to learn on the road. We have to get the experience and time in the environment. And that's the other part of this in terms of training. You have to apply your training in a daily manner so that it becomes subconscious. Like when I walk into a place, when I sit down in a restaurant, I don't really even have to think about where I want to be seated. I just know what feels comfortable to me because it's just natural because of all the training. I'm going to sit where I have my back against the wall, where I can see the exits. I got a position where I can observe the majority of the location. So these are things that we need to practice. And the other thing you mentioned was great, the energy. Even Hollywood can't project some of the energy that happens in real life. So we have to be utilizing our day-to-day life to look at these incidents when we're walking around or we're in the mall and we start to see something. Focus on it and watch people and learn as much as you can about what's going on. Don't be totally in your phone or I got to go and get this item from the store. Watch your environment and learn from it. Every day you can learn something new about what people do and how you should potentially react to them.
So do you guys see what I just did? I had the little ball thought bubble. Huh?
I'm on the single screen. I saw Tom only.
I was thinking, what if we had Tom on again? This is a great introduction. But what if the next time we talked about the top 3 habits that you need to form for situational awareness and how to practice them on a daily basis?
Absolutely.
That would be great. Episode.
That would be great. Now, Tom, you actually, we got to plug this too, because we had a 2 or 3 part episode where we talked about the difference between education and then training, which you hit where you got the classroom portion, the theory base, and then you have the practical application side of the actual training physical base. And you mentioned this too. If you don't create conditioning, that repetition, then that's something that you're failing yourself and your team with, because it needs to be subconscious of the layers that you create.
Yep, I do. Absolutely. You want to get to the level of unconscious competency. That's the ideal, the state, what we call condition gray.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to come back and talk about those the 3 habits.
Tom,
well, thank you, Tom.
It was great chatting with you, and it was an interesting conversation to kick off. And maybe Paul will be back in the galaxy, back on Earth next time we do it.
Yeah, you know what? My signal is so freaking horrible out here. Like I'm kind of going in and out, and I'm looking at my bars. I'm like at 5. I'm like, what the hell's going on? So, Tom, thank you so much for joining us. I didn't really want to interrupt because I didn't want to interrupt in the middle of somebody talking the whole lag time with the cell phone thing. So I apologize.
Well, it's my pleasure being here.
All right. Next time, we're going to have Paul back on 3 Guys and a Ball.